on Nat Geo Wild. This is the story of a brief and deadly moment in nature. It lasts for just a quarter of a second, but is the end result of a highly complex process. The rattlesnake strike has taken millions of years to perfect. Anyone who has ever been bitten will know its potency. But lives can be saved if we can understand the science behind the strike. Stealth, patience, and a surprise attack. The rattlesnake detects the warmth of its victim and hits with an ultra-high-speed strike. Behind this seemingly simple attack is a world of complex variables. Remove just one link from the chain, and the rattlesnake goes hungry. The next hour will reveal, in ultimate depth, how one of the most feared natural enemies does its worst. As blow by blow, we trace the anatomy of the strike. The rattlesnake has finely tuned detection systems which help it deliver its precious venom to the right victim at the right time. Fine if the prey is a ground squirrel, but in the case of an attack on a human, the end result is almost always bad for the snake. Unlocking how and why the snake uses its venom can save human lives. The sharp edge of rattlesnake science is revealing some surprises. Our story starts as a western diamondback rattlesnake emerges from its winter burrow in search of an ambush site for its first meal of spring. The mature western diamondback is big. Its chunky body can be 2 meters long, and while not the longest, it is one of the heaviest of all the rattlesnakes. It moves on its ribs and detects vibrations through its scales and bones, and with a part of its body touching the ground. On its face are cat-like eyes, a pair of nostrils, and 2 large openings known as the facial or thermal pits. They detect heat. It's a feature shared by all pit vipers, the group to which rattlesnakes belong. The snake spends the winter in a kind of suspended animation and doesn't eat for up to 6 months or even longer. In the spring, its first priority is food. Professor Bill Hayes of Loma Linda University is one of North America's leading rattlesnake researchers. He's looking at the biology and ecology behind the rattlesnake's strike.
These rattlesnakes are some of nature's finest rodent traps. They just have an incredible sequence by which they obtain their food that's so fascinating to study.
The western diamondback has made a kill. The head and jaws pull apart, and the outer skin stretches. First, one side then the other of the snake's fangs are used to fang walk the animal into its mouth. Muscles in the neck then take over to squeeze the rat through the throat and down into the stomach, where digestive enzymes break down almost every bit of the prey's body, even the bones. The snake's windpipe opens not at the back of the throat like ours, but at the front of its mouth, so it can continue to breathe even while its mouth is full. The venom used on the victim doesn't affect the snake itself. Venom is not a poison, and it is not toxic when swallowed. The snake will now use those thermal pits on its face to locate a warm spot where it can carry on digesting. It must be at optimum temperature for its digestive enzymes to function properly. A cold snake may regurgitate its food, or even die because the food remains undigested in its stomach. We need to rewind a few days and look at how this snake ambushed its prey. The selection of an ambush site can be crucial. All rattlesnakes rely on surprise. The snake's forked tongue picks up on the tiniest hint of smell, maybe no more than a few molecules. It doesn't work like our tongue. As it darts in and out, it collects chemicals on the ground and wipes them onto special nerve endings in the roof of its mouth. With this, it detects the invisible signs of where potential prey animals have been running. Food for this rattlesnake is rats, mice, and ground squirrels. Joshua Tree National Park in Southern California, Diamondback country. The western diamondback's territory is the American Southwest, yet it accounts for the majority of human snakebite deaths in the United States. The park is prime hunting ground for a healthy population of diamondbacks, as well as other species of rattlesnake. As the suburbs push into the wilderness, rattlesnakes encounter people more often. But throughout North America, each year no more than half a dozen deaths are from rattlesnake bites, far fewer than being struck by lightning.
It's the right time of day, starting to cool down now. Rattlesnakes become active primarily at dusk. And when it's hot like this, though, they'll continue active into the dark.
Fear of rattlesnakes drives people to kill them needlessly. So new kinds of rattlesnake research are vital. A prime ambush site can make the hunt more energy efficient when it works. When it's found the right spot, the snake will hunker down and wait. The strike itself may be brief, but like an airline pilot doing his pre-flight checks, the snake must ensure the conditions are exactly right in order to set up a successful strike. First, the snake must ensure it's in the right place, at the right time, and ready to react. Prey animals, such as rats and squirrels, have regular runs, like miniature highways. On each trail, they leave behind their individual smells. The ground is crisscrossed by these odor trails, but not all are in use at any one time, and the snake is able to detect which trail is used most frequently and most recently. Our western diamondback is not the only species in these parts. Southern California is host to 5 other species of rattlesnake, all hunting the same kind of food. Graduate student Eric Dugan of Loma Linda University has been following them by radio tracking.
Nice. Okay.
One of his snakes, a Southern Pacific rattlesnake, is ready for a replacement radio transmitter. It's knocked out for about half an hour with general anesthetic. When its muscles go limp, Dugan knows it's ready for its minor operation. Unlike larger animals, Rattlesnakes wear their transmitters on the inside. A transmitter on the outside would snag on rocks and bushes.
Put the new one right back in the same spot.
Even the antenna is inside. It lies along the underside of the body just below the skin. The signal it generates will be picked up from up to 1 kilometer away.
So inside this snake right now is a transmitter just like this one. This transmitter was in it for a little over a year.
The new transmitter will last another year. After a 24-hour recovery period, the snake will be released back into the wild, joining Dugan's other snakes, each with its unique radio frequency and bleep.
Okay, and we're ready to go.
By monitoring the radio-tagged snakes, Dugan is able to map where they hunt, and his work is providing new insights.
This is an interesting snake because it occupies the largest home range and moves the most within its home range compared to any of the other snakes. This is the site where I collected this snake prior to replacing its transmitter. And so now that I've released it, it's gone straight to the shade, and it'll stay there until we leave, at which point it'll probably go down a mammal burrow where it's a little bit cooler to spend the rest of the day.
Radio tracking has revealed that different species of rattlesnake occupy different ambush sites, each taking advantage of local geography and vegetation. The speckled rattlesnake hunts on rocky ground and takes on the color of the rock in this area. It has a reddish hue that helps it blend in with underlying red granite. In Dugan's main study site in the Chino Hills State Park, the red diamond rattlesnake prefers stands of prickly pear cactus, where it catches mainly pack rats.
There's a shed skin right here. The shed skin of a red diamond rattlesnake, most likely here in the cactus. Snakes are here.
Around 20% of all the snakes in the world are venomous. And all rattlesnakes fall into that category, since they live by killing their prey through lethal injection. In this area, what separates the different species of rattler, apart from size and color, is where they live, not what they eat. Southern Pacific rattlesnakes like this one have a simple yet cunning hunting strategy. On these open grassy slopes, they intercept their prey by hiding close to or even inside a rodent burrow. The Mojave green is at home in creosote bush country. Its venom is 10 times more potent than the venom from most other rattlesnakes. Where most others have venom that pre-digests their victims' tissues, the Mojaves attack the nervous system. Human victims die from a loss of blood pressure. The Sidewinder, the smallest of California's rattlesnakes, is beautifully camouflaged in the sandy desert. Even its horns break up the outline of its head, and it's easy to overlook. The western diamondback, on the other hand, is at home in scrub or rocky terrain. Our snake has settled under a bush, where it does its best to be invisible. It remains coiled and quite still, its color and diamond pattern matching the surrounding scrub. The snake uses its sensors to find an ambush site that's not too hot, or it'll overheat and die, and not too cold, or its body won't function properly. It's long been known that these snakes are sensitive to the heat given off by their warm-blooded prey. But Professor Aaron Crockmore from the University of Houston downtown has found they are also used for something else. An ingenious experiment reveals all.
To see if the facial pits help rattlesnakes find cool spots in the environment, I developed this Y maze, where one branch ended in a cool refuge and the other branch ended in a hot, stressful area for the animal. Snakes were introduced to the maze at the base and were allowed to crawl to the middle and choose one branch or the other. I repeated this several hundred times, both with snakes with block pits and open pits.
The whole room is kept at an uncomfortable 40 degrees centigrade, and only one of the branches of the Y-shaped maze is cool. Usually, a snake has no trouble finding the cool branch. Its facial pits are sensitive to temperature changes of a tiny fraction of a degree. The snake heads straight to the tube that's 29 degrees, the preferred body temperature of the diamondback. Aaron then blocks both facial pits using tiny styrofoam balls. A piece of reflective kitchen foil keeps the ball in place and helps stop heat from reaching the sensor. It falls off the next time the snake sheds its skin. Now the snake is effectively blind to any temperature difference between the hot and cold branches of the Y maze. And the snake with the blocked pits fails the test and heads for the hot tube as often as it enters the cool one. Back out in the wild, our diamondback remains hidden among the desert scrub. It sits right by the well-used rodent trail it detected earlier. The snake cannot regulate its body temperature as we do, so the dark pigment in its skin absorbs the sun's rays to get ready to strike should prey come by. But even a well-camouflaged western diamondback has to watch its back. This brings us to the next crucial link in the process that gets a snake from emergence to successful strike. All rattlesnakes have inbuilt predator warning systems. A healthy red-tailed hawk is quite capable of grabbing and eating a snake. When it's under attack, the snake fires up its signature tune, one of the most startling sounds in nature. The rattle vibrates at up to 100 cycles per second in a mathematically perfect stationary wave, a movement that requires little energy, so the snake can keep rattling for hours and not get tired. The rattle itself is made of modified scales that are loosely joined. When shaken, they knock against each other. A new segment is added every time the snake sheds its skin, but a rattle rarely grows longer than 8 or 9 segments due to wear and tear. The quality of the sound depends on the size of snake and the length of its rattle. Long rattles of 12 to 16 segments, like the rattle on this eastern diamondback, are quieter than medium-sized rattles. The loudest and most efficient ones are those from 6 to 12 segments long. Also, large snakes rattle at low frequencies, and smaller ones have higher frequency rattles. But curiously, this predator defense can end up being used against the snake. New discoveries show us how a rattlesnake can be duped, and its canny opponent is not who you might expect. Solano Lakes, a scenic park not far from the University of California at Davis. This is the home to a healthy population of closely studied California ground squirrels. It's odd to think of squirrels as upstaging rattlesnakes, But these fluffy characters are more than easy prey. They show some remarkable behavior that's caught the attention of Davis biologist Aaron Rundas. The squirrels scatter at first, but to monitor how they react to a rattlesnake, Rundas sets up a confrontation, yet minimizes the chance of them coming to blows. The rattlesnake in his experiments is the local northern Pacific, and to prevent the snakes from harming the squirrels, but still show as near as natural behavior as possible, Rundas tethers the snake.
So I'm going to hold this, let go of the...
It's placed near squirrel burrows, where babies are probably hiding. And squirrel 9E is the first to come to their defense. Aaron watches and records their behavior using his car as a hide, and he finds that squirrels first react to the snake by waving their tails.
So here you can see a squirrel that's tail flagging at this rattlesnake. Looks like it's just doing a couple individual bouts of tail flagging.
By flagging at it, the squirrels provoke the snake to shake its rattle. The rattlesnake is unwittingly revealing information about itself, its size and therefore its strength and distance it can strike. Vital information that could give the squirrels an advantage. The squirrels use tail flagging rather than calling, so other predators are not alerted. The rattlesnake is effectively deaf and would ignore acoustic signals anyway.
Squirrels, you can see, are coming up fairly close to this snake, really close actually when they're doing their tail flagging behavior, but you'll notice that they're staying just outside of the strike range of the snake.
But even if they're struck by the snake, it's not the end. Other research shows that these adult squirrels have a factor in their blood that gives them immunity to rattlesnake venom. But baby squirrels do not have the same immunity as adults. So parent squirrels need to protect the burrows at all costs. When a ground squirrel is really under threat from a rattlesnake, it will resort to a behavior called substrate throwing, a really potent form of harassment. It shows the snake that it's been spotted and therefore can't rely on a surprise attack to reach its target. The squirrels listen to the rattle. A low-frequency rattle indicates a large, mature snake, one that packs more venom and strikes from a longer distance than a smaller one. In order to better quantify the results from squirrels in the wild, Aaron devised a novel test. Together with the bioengineering department at Davis, he created Robo-Squirrel, whose tail flagging is controlled by a computer. With this, Rundas discovered that the two species have opened a communications channel. Signals from the squirrel affect the posture of the snake. The snake's elongated posture is less defensive. It feels less intimidated. The squirrel's tail flagging causes the snake to coil and show it's on red alert and ready to strike. Squirrels and snakes are actually talking to each other. Back in the wild at Solano Lakes, graduate student Barbara Klukas has found more elements to this snake-squirrel language. She's noticed that if the squirrels find a shed rattlesnake skin, they react immediately. At first, they're suspicious and tail flag, just to be sure it doesn't bite back. But then, Squirrel 1N, a young female, chews the rattlesnake skin and applies the mixture of skin and saliva to its fur. Klukas finds that mothers and babies anoint themselves a lot more than males, and she believes the squirrels have opened up another communications channel with rattlesnakes. This time, using smell. To test her theory in the lab, Klukas prepares 2 absorbent pads. One's laced with a squirrel scent made from hair and droppings, and the other's saturated with squirrel scent plus aroma of rattlesnake made from a shed skin. The pads are placed in an arena, and the rattlesnake let in. The snake uses its tongue to detect the scents, and it'll home in on the squirrel-only pad. In most tests, it avoids the pad impregnated with a mixture of squirrel and rattlesnake smells. Likely it's repelled by the smell of another rattlesnake. Klukas believes that in the wild, the mother squirrel anoints herself so the smell of rattlesnake coming from her burrow fools an intruder into believing a snake is in residence. Many of these anti-snake tactics work only when the squirrels spot the snake coming. After all, rattlesnakes are sneaky ambush predators. Despite all this, where they occupy the same habitat, up to 70% of rattlesnake prey is baby ground squirrels. There are times, though, when rattlesnakes really do meet their match. On such occasions, the rattlesnake must rely on its defensive strike. In Southern California, increasingly more people visit the desert, and more people means more confrontation between them and rattlesnakes. If the sound of the rattle fails to deter this intruder, the rattlesnake does what rattlesnakes do best. It strikes. Snake bites on people are almost always defensive strikes, but the effect of venom on our tissues is much the same as if we were prey. The toxins hit our nerves and start to pre-digest our tissues soon after the strike. At Loma Linda University's Medical Center, snakebite specialist Professor Sean Bush deals with the fallout.
Okay, so you're a little weak on this side, huh?
Just his arm.
Just the whole arm.
Its tail was sort of cocked.
Increasingly, his casualties are the result of doing nothing more than emptying the trash can or weeding the flower beds.
Cause a little redness and swelling, so, and pain for sure.
People are struck mainly on the hand, arm, leg, even on the big toe.
Away, you'll have new skin under there. I'm thinking that your labs are okay.
Treatment is mainly with 2 types of anti-venom. They're the antidote to snake venom. They inactivate the toxins to stop tissue damage.
Well, I mean, let me show you more or less the progression of a snake bite, a typical snake bite. This is a guy that had a really bad one. And you can see here where he has a puncture wound and he's bleeding from it and bruising under the skin. And that goes on to swell and blister, and he gets these ecchymotic blebs. And of course, his whole body swelled because the snake venom makes your blood vessels leaky. And then here's another patient, and you can see in this picture where right where the fang went in and penetrated his knuckle. And of course, he's got a lot of bruising and bleeding there too. And then later, as I followed him over the course of the next several weeks, this skin, it just sloughed away, and so he can no longer extend that finger. And this is a pretty common outcome after snake bite, is loss of some tissue or function of a finger or toe because of all the symptoms that happen. Some of them are kind of dynamic. Like, for instance, this patient here, that's called myokymia, and it just literally means muscle movement under the skin, and it's almost like he has worms or snakes, more apropos, underneath the skin, writhing and twitching. And he did that for several days.
If you are bitten by a snake, medical advice is simple. Stay calm and call the emergency services. Deaths are mercifully rare, But how much time you have depends on how much venom you receive. Over at the university, Professor Bill Hayes and graduate student Scott Herbert are looking at how much venom a snake injects when it strikes at a person.
Okay, this is a western diamondback rattlesnake. This snake is very aggressive. It'll often stand its ground and adopt a very dramatic head elevated posture, and it's very quick to defend itself.
To find just how much venom a rattler injects into a person, the Loma Linda team encourages snakes to strike at limbs, at least artificial ones. The yellow domestic rubber glove represents a human limb.
Now just dangle it in over in this end.
And is filled with a salt solution. They provoke the snake to strike at the glove. Each hit delivers a spurt of concentrated venom, a similar amount it would inject into a person.
Okay.
There we go. That's what we want. If you would, yes, hand me the beaker there quickly.
From this, they've found that 10% of defensive strikes are dry. Snakes avoid wasting venom if they can. But when they do bite, a defensive strike delivers far more venom than a feeding strike, up to a teaspoonful from a large snake. Next, they encase the glove in denim, and they get the snake to strike again. This time they compare the concentration of snake venom proteins in the saline from the plain glove with that from the denim one to see if there's a difference. And with the analysis comes another surprise.
And if you look at these samples, you can see some of them are towards the top end of our standard range. Others of them are kind of light. They're not quite as much venom, not as much protein, so not as much venom in their samples. Darker ones, a lot of protein, a lot of venom. Light ones, not a lot of protein, not much venom.
They've found that 2/3 less venom is injected through denim. So wearing blue jeans is a good idea. The team has confirmed another crucial trend. Adult snakes inject more venom than babies. It's logical, since adults have bigger fangs, and the bigger the snake, the more deadly the bite. Outside the lab in the surrounding desert, our western diamondback is gearing up for action. The fading light marks the prime time for rattlesnake food to appear, which is why rattlesnakes strike to kill, mainly at sundown. Finally, having selected its ambush site, stayed clear of predators, with all senses primed and ready, the snake waits for the prey to come to it. Around the snake is the killing zone, the distance to which the snake can strike. It's one of nature's most lethal moments, but the snake moves so fast, even in slow motion, the finesse of its strike is lost. We need to back up and deconstruct the rattlesnake's strike into 4 recognizable and separate events. Stage 1 is tracking the target. In stage 1, the snake locates its prey, even in failing light. The sense that dominates at this stage, just before the strike, involves those special pits on its face. Professor George Bakken researches how the rattlesnake's pit organs work and what the snake actually sees with them. The camera is a thermal camera, and it's placed, just like the rattlesnake, lying in wait, close to the rodent trail. In this case, a mouse highway on a fallen branch. A short distance away, Bakken waits for his tiny video star to show up.
Okay, we've got a mouse.
Bakken records the thermal images of the mouse and its background on the computer in the field, and takes the data back to his lab for processing. At Indiana State University, Bakken's team works on the structure of the thermal pits to understand exactly what the pits see. A portion of a dead rattlesnake's head is embedded in acrylic, and extremely thin shavings are taken right through the pit organ. The slice clearly shows the two thermal pits. They point forward, giving the snake a stereo heat image and possibly appreciation of depth of field. They consist of two chambers, a large outer chamber and a more slender inner chamber. The chambers are separated by a thin membrane. It's 2/100ths of a millimeter thick and contains up to 2,000 heat-sensitive cells that send nerve impulses to the brain. Each time a slice of the facial pit is taken, it's photographed, and the picture's put into a computer program to build a complete 3D image. In this model, the front outer chamber is shown in green, and the pit membrane is in red. Signals from the pit membrane travel along the nerves to the back of the brain. At the same time, signals from the eyes go to the front of the brain. The snake's visual and infrared fields largely overlap, so the perceived image combines input from both sets of receptors, from the eyes and the facial pits, and this improves the image from the pit alone. The Indiana team then takes the thermal pictures of the mouse in the woods and modifies them to create an image that's close to what the snake can actually see with its thermal pits. The first picture is what the camera sees. The mouse shows up quite clearly. The second picture is what the snake's thermal pit organ sees. But even when the picture is enhanced by the brain, the mouse is no more than a vague blob and only visible when a foot or less away. The snake's brain, though, may have a few more tricks than we know about, and some scientists believe the rattlesnake's thermal image could be better than this. If Bakken's current model is even close to being right, it means the location of the snake's ambush site, right next to a rodent trail, is essential. Armed with this essential sensory information, the snake moves onto stage 2 of its strike, the strike itself. This is where its body changes from a dormant coil into a powerful living harpoon. Its head shoots out half its body length. It's one of the fastest known movements made by an animal with a backbone. The fangs rotate forward and spread apart, and the fang sheaths pull back and push up. Like miniature hypodermic needles, they deliver the venom from slits close to the tip. Bill Hayes has found that the fang sheaths do more than simply protect the fangs.
Let's take a look at the fang here. It turns out the fang sheath is really quite important for regulating venom flow, so that as soon as the fangs penetrate an object, the sheath then gets forced upward. The fang has to be erected at least 60 degrees, opening the route for venom to flow through the fangs, and then out of the fang into the target.
Measuring anesthetized snakes in this way, Hayes has discovered that the length of the fangs and their distance apart correlates closely with the size of the snake and the amount of venom it delivers.
Even though the snake is totally anesthetized, I still have to be very careful because I don't want to get envenomated. He could start to come out of the anesthesia and give me a bite. You got your hand on it? Okay.
The direct application of this work is that a medical doctor with a snakebite patient can know the size of snake and the maximum quantity of venom it could inject, simply by measuring the distance between the two fang marks. It's in the third stage of the strike that the venom gets to work. The snake aims for its victim's lungs, where the venom will be picked up rapidly by blood vessels. Pulses of venom flood the body with toxic enzymes. Venom pumps from the venom sac through special ducts to the fangs. And the amount is controlled by the snake. The larger the prey, the more venom is injected. In the lab, Bill Hayes can take full advantage of this when milking snakes for their venom to analyze its composition.
All right, big guy, come on. Yeah. Oh, don't do that. Okay. All right, go for it. Okay. I'm glad that wasn't in me.
Venom can contain two types of toxic enzymes. One that predigests tissues, including the blood, and one that paralyzes nerves. Snakes can just have one or both of these components, the type of venom varying from species to species.
And that bright yellow color is from an enzyme called L-amino acid oxidase, just one of many enzymes that are present in this venom. Most rattlesnakes have a very proteolytic or just a really digestive venom that turns the inside of their prey into mush and helps to make it easier for them to digest once they've swallowed it.
During the fourth and final stage of the strike, the snake gathers more information about its dying prey. First, it files away the victim's smell profile in its memory, and having injected its deadly venom, the snake, surprisingly, lets go. Sharp rodent claws are dangerous, but the prey is getting away. The rattlesnake's strike and all the effort could be in vain if it can't find it again. But in less than a minute after the venom is injected, the victim's body begins to break down. It's this chemical reaction that determines not only the fate of the prey, but also the success or failure of the predator.